Hello, everybody. Welcome to the World of Brickfilms podcast. I am your host, William, with AW Studios. Joining with me, as always, is my good friend and co-host, Sean Willis of Silly Penta.
Hello again.
And a special guest today is Seza of Yetgo, who has won many awards in the Steinerei over the years. Most recently, winning the... I've actually forgotten the... sorry. the
top prize of the festival this year.
Yeah. Top prize with Deutsche Pass. I do, do forgive me. Sorry, I have many tabs open at the moment. But I did want to, just right off the bat, congratulate you for that. It was a really good film. It got really great response. I know obviously you weren't there, unfortunately, at the actual Steinerei. But I think it got really good reaction from people, and as always, I think we always look forward to seeing your entries in Steinerei.
Thanks, and thanks for having me on here. It's an honor.
Yeah, and of course, also with your Steinerei film from last year. You've just won an award in the Bricks Emotion Awards as well, because we were kind of slow getting the Bricks Emotion Awards back off the ground. So the timing synced up. So there's two things at once, kind of. And also Crisis was it was very much in the conversation for Best Film as well, with the Bricks Emotion Awards.
Yeah, it won soundtrack, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So technically, it was Janis, my composer, Brickstorming on YouTube, who does amazing music also in their own films. Go watch their films.
Yeah, I really liked the music in Brickstorming's Steinerei entry from this year as well.
Mm-hmm.
That really stood out to me in the theatre. There was a particularly funny moment. If people don't know, at Steinerei, the tradition is the prizes are like actual bricks, like construction bricks.
Wait, I could show one.
Oh yeah, that'd be great if you could show, since we're on camera.
Okay.
Very nice.
This is one I have in my room. I think it says best camera from 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
It would have been the first year we were there as well.
Yeah.
That's for the time ship, isn't it? Yeah, the...
the time ship. That was a great film.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So this year, there was a funny moment when Blandier posted in the Brickboard Discord something like, it's a good thing Seza didn't show up because she'd be too burdened with all of these bricks to bring home. And then everyone, ignored the Discord because we were all busy in person with each other, and you were there messaging like, what do you mean, what did I win? Like, it's
it was actually the first thing that I heard from the event, 2 hours of nothing because you were all in that room, and then that message and silence again.
I thought that was pretty amusing when I eventually got back to the hotel and checked up on the messages. And actually, something I can show as well. The Steinerei poster from this year, I actually managed to bring it home on the flight in
nice.
Mostly perfect condition.
Amazing.
I was trying my hardest on the last day in the rain.
Nice. Did you get signatures on there? I think they do that sometimes.
Not on this one. They gave out. They let people take. They had a big stack of posters. Everyone could take one. Yeah. So there was one that we all signed that there are pictures of, but
I managed to grab
one of the various
a poster myself. But I also I've also got to sort of show right now is also the minifigure, the Steinway minifigure. Which nice. I did actually have in the background of my Brawl entry, which as of recording we've just had. I was able to I like having physical minifigure which I can just sort of sneak into Brickfilms. That's going to be a fun little challenge.
Amazing. Yeah, I think I remember that one. Yeah, I also got like not a poster, but they sent me like a little
Oh, nice.
pamphlet with all the films, like with my film here, and I think yours is on the next page.
Oh yeah.
Here.
Nice.
And it also like they sent like 3 bricks, like literal bricks, with the German post, and like it came like 3 packages because it's also Lego prizes and all those bricks, and it was like the smallest package but like the heaviest. Yeah.
Luckily for us, we've never won anything yet, so we haven't had to deal with carrying a brick home. Although if we did, we could just give it to Joko and let him figure it out.
Where's Joko living? Or like in what area?
South of England, I believe.
Ah, okay.
Cornwall's
Like
pretty
not
much
that far,
down
at
south.
least.
Yeah, well, it's still a flight, so I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I'm not sure how that would go with a brick.
Out of curiosity, I remember I was googling like what actually happens if you take a brick with you in customs, and it's kind of like a bit of a grey area. So like they might accept it. Maybe if you just like explain that it is a prize and explain the whole concept of Steinerei, they might just be so puzzled they'll just let you go. But yeah, it's hard to say.
I'm kind of amused that there were even other people on the internet who have the answers to the question of what happens if you try and take a brick with you.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Like
a niche
everything-
question.
Yeah, but like everything has happened already on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think also like in 20 years, a bit more than 20 years of Steinerei, there's probably already been a case of that happening. So someone knows.
Yeah. I mean, I know that Andreas and Alexander have talked about trying to bring bricks back to Austria. I don't know if that would have been flights or not, maybe trains.
Or like shipping it to themselves, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because, I mean, they must have they must have a huge pile of bricks, all the years that they've won.
I think like they're not that active right now, but when they were winning like everything, like every year that I was there, or like I think there were only 3 prizes back then, but they all got to them. Yeah, and now there are a lot more prizes, which is great, but I got 3 prizes this time, so I kind of turned into them in some way.
Yeah. It was
I
a
don't
great
know how
film,
to
though.
feel about that. Thanks. Yeah.
I guess there
and-
always has to be like someone to kind of pass the baton on to be the kind of like the person that wins, that that kind of just wins all the kind of the prizes and like
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I've
I
got
think
a-
this year I didn't really expect it because like I liked it for myself, like the film, but it was a lot more spontaneous than a lot of my work, and a lot more like just doing something that comes into my mind. And the other films were so great, like especially something like Rentner Gang from Bachelor Productions with like a group of old people committing a bank robbery. Awesome film. Or like Lampe and like a lot of amazing films. I think I probably miss a lot when I just like count some, but I was pretty surprised by that eventually. But for some reason, people liked it.
Yeah, I mean, we liked it the best. It was not a surprise to us that it won the top prize, and it's nice to see one of your films finally win the top prize. Because we've enjoyed them in the last few years as well.
Yeah, I feel like you've gotten our vote like each time we've been there, pretty much.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Of course, it also helps that they're visually inventive, since we can't understand the other films that are more heavily dialogue focused. Like last year, was it last year that the jury prize went to a musical? It was largely lost on us because we didn't know what they were singing about.
Oh yeah, I don't know if it was last year, but what was it, Zollstock? I don't even know what it's in English, but like for measuring, like a measuring device, and it was like a whole song about that, and in German it was very funny, but of course, makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one where, of course, we could tell everyone else was laughing and responding greatly to it. So we were just thinking, well, it must be good.
That's something that I do sort of. I think I've remarked on a few times already, but that a lot of the Steinerei entries are very visual, and it's interesting how much is at we can actually understand. It's something that I definitely feel, with your films is that there's probably a couple of things like when I get to sort of rewatch it with the subtitles, there's probably a couple of things that I pick up on, like the jokes or anything like that. But the core kind of like concept it's pretty like easy to understand. Like, there's enough there to understand that where we kind of get like, this is really good,
Yeah, definitely. Maybe that's because I like started doing silent films essentially. Like I think the first years of my brick films are mostly like also because I wasn't sure if I want to like go into English communities or German communities. I didn't know which existed, and so it was a lot of visual language, and also like I had that idea back then that I have to like explain everything in audible and also in visual terms. I don't know if I like still that much into that idea, but I still like working with visual storytelling a lot, and expanding on that.
Well, that's actually something which I feel that with in the past doing a lot of like some visual films, that simply doing that a couple of times, it does change the way that you view the process of making films. It kind of does stay with you, is what I mean, basically. And I think that it affects, you start to, look at your scripts, maybe even subconsciously, and think like, how much of this actually do I have to actually explain, like in the sense of like, with words, and how much can I actually just convey visually? And, and a lot of times it's just easier to convey these things visually. I think it's an experiment I would, ask any brick filmer to do is just try and make a silent film and just see where you go from there, because you don't have to just only make silent films from then on, but you will probably end up with more of a visual idea of storytelling.
Yeah, definitely. Especially like I think a lot of brick films are automatically, or like a lot of films in general, in that sense that it's like shot, reverse shot, like two different thought of camera setups, which works fine, like especially in dialogue, can be great use of comedy and can work. But it also like it takes some learning or some figuring it out to actually go to other places with the camera, especially I think. Like I did with Deutsche Pass, like having the camera do stuff like spontaneously, but like in a way, okay, I want to tell the story, and I'm not just like trying to tell what's on the page. I think with Deutsche Pass I didn't have really something on the page. I think the dialogue was all added later, like according to the scene. So I had like just some list of things I want to do, and then I had the camera, I had the characters, and figured stuff out how it might be cool, and then like moved the camera around, a lot of zooms, a lot of like stuff like that. And I think that's a lot of the language of the film right now. With everything just like figured out on the spot, and then the dialogue added later to like make it somewhat make sense and hold it together. But it's like a very spontaneous and a very like improvising process of filmmaking, I think.
Mm-hmm. I do think it stood out how the camera moved around, and it moved through rooms and around columns and things, and from character to character quickly at points. But I do agree that making silent brick films, it could even subconsciously affect people's approach in the future. And Yeah, with Deutsche Pass, I rewatched it when I got home. I watched it with the English subtitles, and I did think like, okay, yeah. Now that I've seen it with subtitles, I got a few additional details, but I was pretty happy to like think to myself, I understood the plot. Like I
Yeah,
I did know
amazing.
what was going on the first time around.
But like, what were things that you thought might like? What was it that was like added, or what was there a thing that you did understand like from seeing the like a specific thing?
I mean, nothing even that major. Just maybe just certain jokes that are dialogue or like language based that I would have missed out on the first time around. But as far as like actual plot beats, yeah, it was all easy to understand from just context clues and the visuals.
And it is funny to because it's, you know, I'd say a very ambitious film on a conceptual level, you know, especially in a break film form where, you know, it's a film, yeah, about, you know, like bureaucracy and how these laws can just suddenly change, and I don't know, it's kind of, yeah, so it's a very kind of daring film in that sense, and yet it's something which is still understandable, you know, without the dialogue. You know, that's in itself really quite impressive, I think.
Yeah, and also like what I just now realized, what you probably like had no possibility to get from the film. Like, it is not only in German. Like, a lot of the lines are, or some lines are also in Turkish, because it's like a mother tongue of mine, and like it is a very important thing of the movie because it is about like getting your passport, your identification, as someone in Germany who is not white, who is not German, like something like that. So yeah, there's the whole thing of like a lot of the lines, even people in Germany from Germany who don't have that Turkish background don't understand or like can guess, and sometimes there are subtitles for some things, but like a lot of like also youth language, like I wrote the screenplay, or the like sort of screenplay, with my brother who also plays the main character, and like he also imported a lot of youth Turkish slang into that, which I don't even use, and so a lot of that, and for you it was just like some brabbling around without a sense to it, but like all the visuals. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I think I managed to pick up from the YouTube comments. I think that some of it was in Turkish. Somebody mentioned that, and
Yeah.
it's the first brick film on the wiki in the category Turkish language brick films.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was curious if there was some connection there, if you had some connection to Turkey, so your brother or your family would be fluent in Turkish.
Not exactly. Like both of my parents come from Turkey, and like moved here as a child. Yeah, probably that's not. I don't know if that's so known in non-German speaking areas, but like there was a time 50 years ago where there was a lot of immigration from Turkey to Germany, especially for like work, like in the factories, because Germany had to be like rebuilt after the Second World War. And it was a lot of like Turkish people who came here, rebuilt it, and a lot of them stayed here, which is understandable. And there's also a lot of like racism against Turkish people because of that in Germany, because it's like a whole type of population, but it's like a lot of differences in day-to-day life. And yeah, so I grew up with a little bit of Turkish, but not that much, so I'm not entirely fluent, and my brother is also not that much, but like my parents even work as translators,
Okay.
so they could also assist me on the lines, like I wrote them and they looked over it. Yeah. But I
Yeah.
also like one time I showed it at a local cafe event thing, like spontaneously showed Deutsche Pass, and there was a Turkish person, or some Turkish people already came to me and told me how much they connected with it because of like that aspect, which is like the most amazing thing, that people who I write about like it and feel they themselves represented in some way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's always been interesting to me that German brick filming, maybe particularly on brickboard and centered around Steinerei, but it's always seemed to have had a culture of like reflecting reality and like dealing with real topics, and in doing so in a way that does suit brick filming. But like a lot of like Go Lego stuff or like Nick Goudret stuff, there's a lot of the big films from past Steinereis similarly like have some sort of Go Lego stuff had a lot of like climate conscious messaging in it. So I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, also like Brickstorming does a lot of that also, and I think like it was always there, but at the moment we're like starting a lot of talking about that. Like it's not that everyone in Germany is super political. It's just like there are some brick filmers there who do that stuff, and like topics like, for example, climate change is like a sort of political topic, but it's also like just a thing that is happening in the world. So
yeah,
if I'm gonna film something in this world, it's like maybe even political, or maybe more political to leave it out, because it's like also a political decision in that way. And
exactly,
I think we are talking a lot about that at the moment in Germany. Also, we had like a Pride Month event for the last years and stuff like that.
I think that so one of the things I wanted to ask, actually kind of related to that, is do you think that the overall kind of goal with like making films with the core kind of brickboard community is kind of different to that sort of like some of the stuff you see in the more kind of like, I guess, English language side of things, where it's all about making content and getting views and stuff that like on Bricks of Motion we're trying to push against. But I think that like, I don't know, maybe if you cultivate this kind of community that is focused on the more artistic, more kind of like focusing on like, I don't know, films that have actual meaning to them, is that kind of like, I don't know, I guess that is reflective in the films you make, and
Yeah, I don't know about like the whole brickboard, and I think like a lot of different motivations come into place there and clash each other, but I think it's maybe a little bit less like engagement based and clicks based, maybe because like in Germany we have our little community, and you are not like, if you don't make like Star Wars films or something like that, you won't like get into 10,000s of views, but so we have like our community, like our contests, the Steinerei, and so it's a lot more like the Steinerei, like also your contests are a lot of about like filmmaking and camera work and stuff like that, like artistic merits. And I think that comes a lot into play. And I think for me personally, it has like, with my own politicization, I did become a lot more aware of like how work stuff in my films. Like I saw how political the word is in some senses, like just from the go, and how political everything can be in some sorts, and like tried out ways of implementing that, because I think like also what we do with films, with brick films especially, like is talking to each other in some way, like showing each other our thoughts or feelings or emotions, and politics can be also like in that discussion. Yeah
The topic sort of came up at Steinerei. We'd mentioned to people occasionally something like, oh, we're kind of jealous of the brickboard community not having the element of the culture of people who are like on the content grind and trying to get views, trying to get engagement, trying to get subscribers. And people were basically saying to us like, yeah, the German brick filmers aren't really chasing that because they know that the German language brick films aren't going to get those views. Like it's impossible, so it's just not really a thing.
Yeah, although I know some German films, like Janus, my composer, made like a film 10 years ago. I think it's like The Search of Darth Vader's Mask or something like that. And I think it has hundreds of thousands of views. but it's very rare, and also like a thing that many people just don't care about that much. I don't know. Maybe we're just like more anti-capitalist than you, in some sense. Yeah. But I'm a little bit surprised, because I'm a little bit in the English communities, but mostly because of like you, like because of Bricks in Motion, and like those English communities that like essentially do care about like filmmaking and that stuff. So I don't really come into connection with like big money making. I don't know if they make money, but like engaging views making films. Mm-hmm. Like I know some of them, but only from the far. Is that such a huge thing in the English community?
Well, you know, we're always having people joining our server where we can tell they're only there to self-promote, and they're, you know, begging for views, begging for subscribers, and we're just thinking, no, that's not our vibe.
Although I understand it in some way, like especially if you're like young and starting it, and maybe you see something in your movies and want to share it to the world, and you don't want like the feeling of sitting in front of a film that you uploaded and it has like 2 views. That's a little bit devastating, and I see that it could be for people. Yeah. So I also understand that angle of it, I would say.
I think that's something that, because I think it's something that we brought up, you know, a decent amount recently on the podcast, and I think it's something that I do want to reiterate, is that I do understand why some people feel this way. And, you know, it's something which, like, I'd be the biggest hypocrite if I, you know, said that I didn't feel these things myself about, like, you know, if I'm proud of something I've made, I kind of want people to see it. But I think that there's also, when you're, you know, because I think for a lot of people, especially if they're starting the kind of like, they're starting the kind of, you know, going into brick filming at like, say, like a relatively young age, so like the teenagers or whatever, that like, if they found a hobby that they really enjoy, you know, like with brick filming and that kind of stuff, there is this kind of feeling of like you want to create a career out of something you love, right? Like that's something which I think a lot of us can relate to, like, being at a certain age, right? That you kind of, there's a at some point in your life, it feels like that's the dream, to have like your hobby be your career. But then I think you start to over time realize that's not, I mean, at least, I don't know, majority of the time, that's not really what you want. And you will slowly kind of like end up, if you try and do that and try and kind of, you know, go on that grind, I guess, you start to not actually make the things that you want to make. You end up making things that are like, you feel algorithmically are going to do well. And then it's just like, it's not really the stuff you want to make, you know. It's not, you know, it's that at that point it's not a hobby, it's you know, it's just like any job. And it's, I think in a lot of ways, like it's kind of, you know, trying to kind of encourage people to realize maybe they don't actually want to have that. You know?
I do sometimes views do still annoy me in certain ways, but with the recent example being, you know, I made this complete throwaway for Brawl, 30 seconds of just random Despicable Me related nonsense, just for the sake of entering Brawl. And for some reason, it's like doing relatively well. And I just noticed that it already overtook my feature-length history of tech video in views. So, like, I thought nobody would watch my Brawl film. I thought it would just be a total flop. So when I saw that it had already overtaken the history of tech video, I was like, oh, that kind of hurts.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, I feel that, like, every time you do something related to, like, a big thing, it gets rewarded, like, from YouTube, from, like, that app, like, that, like, big company, essentially. Like, it's not, I hate that people are, in some way told everywhere, like also on YouTube, that YouTube gives you algorithms and says you have to be like big because like they want to make money like with your views, essentially. So it's all like everything's telling you art isn't the important thing about it, and you just want to make like a film. You started it because you had like Lego and wanted to play with it and film it maybe. And it like everything tells you have to commodify it, which
That's true.
like gets away all the art very very quickly.
Yeah. So, like, even seeing how well that video did, like, I do get that feeling of like, if I was younger, if I was newer, I'm sure I would think to myself, oh, I need to make more of those. I need to make more 30-second stupid meme videos, like, instead of making these longer pieces that I actually care about more.
And it is funny as well, because I think that in some ways it's like you're less like, worried about something not getting views. You're kind of more annoyed when it's a certain video getting views.
Yeah.
But
Like,
I think
I wish that didn't get views.
But I also think though it's interesting because you have to view it like not in a vacuum. You have to view it in a sense of like the audience, like comparing that audience, the audience that are going to watch that video versus the audience that are going to watch like an hour and a half, kind of detailed kind of documentary video, right? And I think the difference is that like there's on one end there's more of a much more casual audience that aren't really kind of as soon as they've watched that they're going on to the next thing. It's not really going to stay with them, versus like the other video is something that people, even if it's a smaller audience, it's an audience of people who are going to get more out of that. And I think that's something that's really important to think about, that like and I've probably said this so many times, but the difference between I'd much rather have a video that gets like 300 views but has like a lot of engagement that people seem to actually resonate with, than make something that has like 30,000 views and has like less comments and less like less feedback from because that's seems to be what has happened. Like that seems to be the pattern with those sort of things.
Yeah, definitely. But like one comment that is like very from the heart, which I get from like on Deutsche Pass, there are some people that commented like stuff, which was like I could make a film that a lot of people like see as a meme and then scroll to the next thing. But like for me, like what's that against like one person seeing it, but that person being like moved by it and like changed by it, and like there you had a real impact on a person, on a living being. Like I guess memes are also okay. I like memes. I also like scroll through memes, but like for my way of going to making art, I'm much more happy with like actually moving people, maybe like changing opinions. I hope to do that with Deutsche Pass also. Like it is, I think in senses very radical. Like I wasn't quite sure. I don't know how political the people actually are sometimes on the brickboard, and I don't know how critical of like institutions and what's their like political compass. I don't know. So it was like also the plan of challenging that and seeing what discussions would arise from that, which like I wasn't there to witness the first discussions, but I heard something from like the internet.
I mean, I think whenever we're at Steinerei, we're always saying like, wow, everyone here is so nice and accepting. Like, it'd be great if everyone else was like this too.
I do think it's funny, like the prospect of kind of like, by comparison, it's not likely that someone's going to go up to you and be like, in person and say like how much this meme video meant to them, but like they might say that about a film that actually has like, thought and meaning into it.
Yeah, and also like what topics you're gonna choose, and like I think the video that I most associate with that is like a video of mine called Transplanet, Lego Transplanet, which like didn't. I think it has some views, but like not as much engagement as like a Steinerei film or like something else. And I think a lot of people like watched it and saw it and liked like the camera work or something like that, but like weren't able to connect with it because it was like a particular experience. And then I heard from like trans people around me who watched it, or like trans people on the internet who watched it, and like those like not many people, but like those people feeling seen and like understood, and like that element is so warm, so yeah, it makes me so happy. Like especially with like the film community, but also like Brickboard, which has a lot of nice accepting people. Like I love the people there, but it still has the problem that is everywhere else in like the brick film community. Mostly still like Lego associated with filmmaking, or filmmaking in general is like a lot catered to people who with like certain backgrounds, certain situations. But yeah, it's a little bit sad because I feel there are like a lot of brick filmers who could get into that community, but like don't find the way into that because it's like such a closed space in some senses. And yeah, it's always nice to open it in some way, or to get people in who wouldn't normally. Yeah.
I know I have had that sort of a similar sort of thought in the past, that like up until recently society has sort of pushed the idea of like, oh, Lego is for boys, oh, filmmaking is for boys, you know, computers and editing on computer programs is for boys. So that's like three things that have to intersect to make brick films that society pushed as like for boys. So, you know, it's like, who knows how things will look like 20 years from now. But while I'm thinking of it, I found it kind of amusing that you mentioned like Brickboard being more anti-capitalist than Bricks in Motion. And what I think what is funny to me about that is that Brickboard and Bricks in Motion both grew out of the original brickfilms.com. Like Brickboard, like some German brick filmers on brickfilms.com met in 2004 and started Brickboard, and then of course Bricks in Motion like continued for after the original brickfilms.com in 2008. But like, even though it wasn't militant back then until things went bad, but like one of the sticking points in 2008 was all these ads appearing on the website, and people were like, no ads, you know. And then when Bricks in Motion was first founded, like one of the promises was like, it's going to be ad free. So even now when I go on the site and I see the ads in the forum, I'm like, that bothers me. We were supposed to not have ads on the forum. Like I'm telling people in our staff channel, hey, can we take those ads down? But I feel like we've had to sort of at points we've had to try to make an intentional effort to maintain some of our like distinct identity. I don't know if it's been the same on Brickboard or not, or has it just sort of kept its identity and more naturally?
I think it did in some senses, like especially website. Maybe it's also like, I think Germany has some specific rules about websites and ads, and as far as I know, we never bothered to look into that, maybe intentionally, so that it's like completely ad free, I think. Like with Steinerei, it's the thing that like that is an event in a cinema, which has to be organized, which has to be paid for. Like it's always a huge discussion, how are we going to pay like the I think sometimes it's like €300, but sometimes it's also a few €1,000 depending on where you go. And so like for Steinerei we have like sponsors. I think these are the sponsors of this year. No ads on this podcast, I'm sorry. But only for showing it. And I think the great thing is that most of the time we like trying to find ways in having it like as good as possible. Like we try to go as far as we can, like have especially like little brick shops in the area, like companies who produce like bricks and like Lego sets, like not Lego but like sets with bricks, and I think that's like a lot of the thoughts go into that, like how can we make it at least the best that it can be in that situation, because we have to do something if we want to like do such an event. But yeah, we tried to do our best, I think. Yeah, or like the people organizing it. Yeah.
It is interesting, I think, like, you know, talking about the, you know, with brickfilms.com and the kind of that, why is the ads and the rejection towards that, and how much that, you know, is reflective of kind of modern day internet. Like how, you know, without ad blocker, you're basically just, it's just complete, you know, nothing but ads, just like you can't escape the ads kind of thing. And it's interesting how, like, you know, maybe the kind of that kind of a huge part of the brick filming community was kind of at the forefront of rejecting that kind of thing.
It was the whole internet back then at that point in time.
Yeah.
Like, when ads first started appearing on YouTube videos, like when people first got monetized on YouTube videos, the audience at that time rejected that. Like, the first people that got monetized got loads of hate for being monetized on YouTube. And our old friend Blunty was actually one of the people that they tested monetization on, so he would have gotten a bunch of hate back then.
Interesting.
Don't
get me sidetracked about Blunty though.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is interesting actually. Yeah, I mean, like, at its core, like, the internet, the way it started being very much about open source and community focused, things being sort of free, and things not being monetarily focused, and how that's I mean, as with everything, it's kind of moving away from that. It's important to kind of maintain some level of resistance from that, and in whatever way you can, I guess. That's why, like, I don't know, I think it's in some roundabout way, I feel like I can turn this back into talking about the kind of sort of brick films. Brick films like that you make that are meaningful and have some kind of challenging ideas in them, and like how like in a world that feels very at times quite bleak, just to put it lightly. I think for anyone to see a film like that and it resonate with them, it kind of makes, I don't know, making art that is meaningful, that feels like makes the world feel less hopeless, is important to have, like, for yourself as the artist, but also for people watching it. Like, I love that. It reminds me of the kind of the ending of Crisis. Like that kind of that last quote, like, I still have hope. Like, I don't know. That's something to hold on to, I guess. Is that it's the slightest bit of hope that you have, you're gonna have.
Yeah, definitely. I do see that. Like, also, which is quite great that although like ads and stuff, we still have those websites. Like, we have like Bricks in Motion, we have the Brickboard, which are like independent in some way, and like they are kind of dependent on YouTube and on Vimeo, like, to upload stuff, and like there's a lot of things going over the Discord, which I'm not that much into, like, what Discord is as a company. Like, they seem okay compared to others, but like it's a company, it's a big company.
Yeah.
It exists to make money for some rich people, and like having that community, like it's a community. It's like the best thing you can do against that. Like, the best thing you can do is start your community, like have your own room with your own possibilities, which is working quite well, like in the brick film sense. It was like, I think that's also a thing that is in Deutsche Pass a lot. Like, with spoilering it a little bit, like the ending is that he gets the Deutsche Pass, the passport, and is still convicted because some little detail or something like that. And like he managed to win the system. He won it, but it didn't work. Because the system still wanted to convict him. And the thing that saves him is not like that he has the Deutsche Pass, but it's like that everybody in the room stands up and fights for him to escape, and like everyone gets together, which is like, in some sense, a small situation of like creating a community, which like Bricks in Motion is and Brickboard is in some way. So like we're doing the best we can do in that sense.
And even being this tiny niche, if people do come together on some issue, they could have influence.
Yeah, definitely, of course. And like we do stuff, like in Germany we do like a huge event in a cinema, and like that happens, and it gives people hope, and like people who are online who maybe need some community, like maybe are isolated in real life or whatever, can like get into this community and have people around. And it's like a very important thing that we should like cherish, I think.
Yeah, I think
That's the thing. It's like, it's yeah, incredible. Really, the fact that you have something like Steinerei in every year. It's I can totally get the feeling of just feeling like, I don't know, for that brief time, like when you're in Steinerei, you go to the after party and everything. It's just like feels like you feel like you're on a high of life, and it just feels like at that point of time, just feels like, I don't know, life can be really good, and people can be, people can just come together and have a nice time and just be nice, and it's something like, there's a sense of like that, if more of that kind of thing existed just in the world in general, like, people would just have more hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think every year we say, man, it's a shame this is only once a year. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm interested. It's interesting that you mentioned that booking the cinema. You said it was like, could be 300 or it could be over 1,000. Yeah, I have wondered in the past, like, around how much does it cost for an organizer to put on a Steinerei, because, like, especially if we sometimes think to ourselves, oh, I wonder if we could ever do some sort of in-person brick film festivals, but yeah, it's kind of mysterious how much that might actually total in the end. So I guess we'd have to ask if ever we were really, really serious about it. We'd have to know some sort of ballpark price.
Yeah, I think for that, like, people who already organize the Steinerei are already a lot of times, like, happy to help with that. Like, I think like Janis already did a Steinerei like a few years back, and I think that was like a little bit into the thousands, which is a lot of money. But that's what it needed. I think it depends a lot if you have like the connections to like a cinema, if it's like a big cinema or like a small little artsy chain. But also they have like rules. I don't know what it's in other countries, but like Germany is very strict in bureaucracy. If you haven't guessed from watching my movie, but yeah, it's very bad in that. But yeah, if you know people, it could be for a very low price, but it depends very much, I think.
Yeah, I did have that thought before that, like, for all of the different elements that you'd need to book and pay for, yeah, it must be a couple thousand, which, even though it sounds difficult enough, but yeah, that's pretty much what I would have expected. So it's kind of like, it's reasonable enough. We'd still be able to consider that if we wanted to do some special event.
It's like if you were going to go to like a tiny like conference room kind of booking, with the expectation of there being like 20 people, that alone would cost like, at least like 200. So, and obviously it's going to be much bigger than that to have like a cinema that's going to seat like hundreds of people. So, it kind of makes sense it would be that much. But I think there's like, the prospect of doing something like Steinerei in America would be really interesting. It's just a matter of kind of like, America is a big country. And I think it's like, it would be the equivalent of being like expecting people all across Europe to come to Germany. It's like, I don't know, it'd be fantastic if a lot of people showed up, but it's just a matter of like, it's easier said than done, isn't it?
Yeah, especially with like already in Germany, like from here where I am in Hildesheim to Vienna where it was this year, it's like 10 hours with the train, or depending on how you go, but it's already very far, and it's like nothing against like lengths of driving in the US, and I think there are also a lot of different things that could get wrong, or like I can't imagine a lot of things being like harder to pay for there or to organize, like how the structures are, how cinemas are in that. Yeah, but maybe you can get it to work. Like I also did some film screenings that were not Lego film related, but that I did for pretty much no money because I knew some people who had a room, and we went there and it worked. Like that also is possible.
Yeah, we have a far off concept in mind that maybe a once in a lifetime type of deal, not a once a year thing. But I do I want to ask the sort of the usual question. Even though we're a fair bit in now, but we still got to ask the classics. I want to ask about how you started brick filming in the first place, but also how did you find brickboard initially?
I think I was like interested in filmmaking as a whole a long time, like from early childhood, as you are. But then like I did something like some trying out with a friend, and then there was like a contest by something associated with Lego. I don't know what exactly it was, but it was like do 30 seconds of Batman, like of something with Batman. Maybe people already also submitted to that or know that. But so I did like a 30-second film and was like, oh, maybe I'm gonna win something. A very crappy film that definitely wasn't gonna win anything. But it was so nice that I kept going and did a lot of stuff, like tried a lot of things out. Especially in my first year, I have so much Brickfilms. I don't know how I got the time back then.
I'm amazed by that as well. Yeah. I mean, even up to recent years, it seems like you have so many contest entries and community event entries. Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, that's right. I think like it's just a lot of fun, I guess. But yeah, also with like university and back then with school, it is possible to have that time. Like not everyone does, but I luckily did have the time, did have the Lego. And yeah, I think it was like 1 or 2 years into brick filming when I did like a Christmas series with like detectives and some mystery. And then actually Bashi from Outland Studios approached me in the YouTube comments and said, oh, we're having this festival called Steinerei. Why don't you just like go onto the website? And I think by then I already like tried to Google to find communities and like stuff on brick filming, and I found like words. I think I also found Bricks in Motion, but I went there. It was too complicated for me. I left it at first. And yeah, so I first got into Brickboard, got to Steinerei. It was also at that time that we made a Discord server, so that all started at that point. Yeah, and then I kind of moved around, like also with Bric-a-Brac back then. Yeah, I think that's like the way. And like where I'm studying right now in Hildesheim, I'm like studying basically film, like media arts. Like not all Lego, not all bricks, but like at the time I'm making like with like bigger figures. I don't know if you see it.
Yeah.
But that sort of stuff. Yeah. And I got here only because I knew Jannis, who I already mentioned a lot in this thing, I think. But we met at my first Steinerei and their first Steinerei. And like we both liked each other's films. Like mine was some superhero film. I did these ones. And they did like the first Lampe, which is like a superhero comedy show that's still going. And then we were both like the only people from the brick filmers who were sitting at the top of the cinema. It had like 2 stages. And after the showings, they would like tell every brick filmer to come onto stage to make a huge photo. Like I think they did it with you as well. And so Jannis and I were moving down the stairs as only us two. And like recognized each other and were like, oh, you did that film, right? Yes, you did that film, right? Yes, I liked your film. I liked your film too. And then the rest of the stairs we went silent. And we didn't talk to each other at that evening anymore. But somehow I managed to be in Hildesheim now. And yeah. it all worked out. I guess.
Yeah, sometimes I see German brick filmers active on YouTube only, or else active in the English speaking community, and I think to myself, why aren't they involved with Steinerei? Like they're missing out. But I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's still like a very much in group. Like we try to find brick filmers, German brick filmers, and write to them and say, hi, do you already know Brickboard? But it could like also look very, because it's like such a clear group of people, and like people who have like insiders and all of that. And as I said, also like barriers of like being a very particular group, and it's a bit sad. I hope people find to the Brickboard.
I mean, I don't want to make generalizations about brick filmers, but there is a kind of correlation between, I guess, the brick film community and people who have just might be a bit kind of nervous about, going something as big as that with that many people.
Like introverted. Yeah.
Yeah. I also think as well, like, I don't know, I guess in some ways, obviously Germany is a big country. If me in the past, like, I probably would have thought, like, if there was a big event in Yorkshire, it would have seemed like a distance for me. Obviously, like, nowadays I wouldn't think of it as a distance, but like back in the day I would have thought of it as being like, I'm not going to go all the way to Yorkshire to go to a brick film event,
Yeah, especially if you're like younger and yeah, but I see that. I think like already for sitting there for hours and moving little figures around, you might have to be a little bit autistic to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the mostly unspoken things that we've all thought at some point in brick filming.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I feel like the amount of patience that you have to make a brick film. Whenever I tell people about it, they're always like, how on earth do you have the patience to do it? And my answer to always that is just like, I have no idea. I don't know. Like, I can't explain to you like how I have the patience to make a film.
Yeah. But I find that question also like a little bit weird, because it's like always the first question if you tell someone you're doing brick films. It's like, but that takes a lot of time, does it? And it's like, okay, yes, I know, but it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How long does it take to make a brick film? That's the classic one. It's like, well, I mean, there's a walk cycle, but then there's also like an action scene.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
The question of how long it takes to make like a minute of footage, it is kind of impossible to answer, because it is like, well, are we talking? Yeah, I could do a figure walking in a line for a minute. That wouldn't take very long. Could do that in a day, but like, if it's a more complicated film, I could spend a month on a minute.
But I think I have like a standardized answer for that. Like I think I always say it takes for me 1 hour of animating to do 10 seconds of animation. Although in the past, like in the last months especially, I recognize that isn't the case anymore, and it takes a lot longer now. But it's still something I answer sometimes.
I mean, especially if you have a crowd shot, like you had plenty of crowd shots in the new film, that would take longer.
Yeah.
I find now that like the thing that takes longer for me to do than the actual animation is the lighting, setting up the lights, especially because I've got a lot more particular about it. It's something which
that's the problem.
I feel like I compared to a lot of the stuff, I feel like the lighting was the last thing that I really kind of like focused on the technical level. And it's something which like now I look back at like even some of my stuff that is not that old, and I think like that isn't lit the way that I'd like things now. And now I realise like I can spend like a whole hour I've got the set built, I've got the shot set up, everything's ready to go, and then I spend an hour just like going like, no, this doesn't look right, this doesn't look right, this doesn't look right.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But it does so much, like it has such an impact. it's something you don't think about, but it's like so important in the end. Yeah, especially like with the film that I'm making right now, that is stop motion, but not with bricks. I have a person, like someone who studies also like technical filmmaking, who comes to me all the time and like does the lights for the shots. And it's like such a different space, like having someone who does that kind of professionally do that, because it's like they look so much better, the images, and I don't know, especially I don't know really why, but it works in some way. I think I learned a lot from that person also. But yeah, it really opens your mind to see like a professional doing that in some way. Yeah,
It's crazy how much, you know, just how much the lighting affects the quality of the image, because I think that I look back at like the stuff I was doing in like 2016, like literally 8 years ago. I'm using the same webcam to this day, and aside from the fact that it was like more compressed 720p like uploads that I was doing back then, and obviously now it's like uncompressed Dragon Frame and 1080p. Obviously, there's a difference there in itself, but it's all in the lighting. Like, you know, like it's mad how much sharper and just sort of like, you know, how much there's kind of depth of field. There's a kind of like an illusion of like like a world outside of that set. And it's all, yeah, again, it's you know, it goes from being a Lego set being filmed to being like an actual, like, yeah, a film, you know, in a way. It's crazy.
Yeah. I wonder what would be some of your biggest influences in filmmaking, because, you know, it's pretty easy to tell that you're not primarily influenced by brick films, like by other people's brick films. Which we always love to see that. We always love to see when people have brought in a multitude of influences into brick filming.
Good question. So I do like watch a lot, or I try to watch a lot of different movies, like a lot of different movies from different places. Like I think things that I spontaneously have in my head that did a lot to me filmmaking wise, like Kurosawa films from the 60s, 70s, like old samurai movies especially, which have like amazing camera work and like very strong images and thoughts, and like wind and everything. But also like something like from Studio Ghibli, like Miyazaki films influenced me a lot, I think, when I eventually got to watch them. Yeah, stuff like that, but also like a little bit into the artistic cinema, something like that. I don't know. But yeah, weird artistic films. Like in the last time, like for Deutsche Pass, I think I got a lot from the work of Boots Riley, who did Sorry to Bother You, which is an amazing film. About like a person in a call center trying to move up the hierarchy and discovering like capitalism, but it's also with like weird fantasy elements, and yeah, Boots Riley also did I'm a Virgo, which is on Amazon Prime right now, an amazing show which is like a similar mix of like real life and like fantasy elements, which I also tried to do in Deutsche Pass, which is set in Germany, in like a German Behörde, on German streets at times, but also like with a little bit weirdness sprinkled in, like with like three-headed dogs that do stuff. Yeah, but I think I was very impressed by that mixing of like fantasy and real life, and by like the effects that it can achieve also in like what you think about the film and what you think about like those elements and like the themes that go beyond that. And also in brick filming, quickly I want to mention, I think a lot of influence for me came actually from Joko, and from Joshua Nelson.
Okay.
And Joshua Nelson did like, I think it's Zombie Man Legend or something, like I think it's a whole trilogy of like 30-minute films which are mostly people running through labyrinths and weird monsters, and they're so creatively done with like camera work and Dutch angles and everything basically. And I think that also Brickfilms definitely influenced me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot.
I did.
Yeah.
I did actually want to quickly shout out. I saw The Sorry to Bother You is a really good film. Yeah, I remember watching it. I think it was actually Sloth Paladin, Robots with Knives, that actually recommended that to me, and yeah, it's a film I'd recommend. That's not a brick film; it's a live action film. It's really good.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, I did watch one of the Zombie Man films. Like somebody recommended it. Was it for a podcast? Maybe.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it, like not as like a showcase, but we have talked about it, I think, or maybe as when we spoke to Josh Nelson.
Oh yeah, that would make sense. It would. Yeah, I was surprised. Like, wow, it's 30 minutes long, but yes, like really good.
Yeah.
Good set pieces and movement. Actually, I do love in your brick films, and especially in the recent one, how you do lean into the Lego-ness of brick films. Like, I loved that in Deutsche Pass there was minifigures and homemaker figures and technique figures and even Friends mini dolls, and I think there's a Fabuland figure in like one or two shots as well.
Mm-hmm.
It leans so far into like sort of representing all the types of characters, and to the point where it's not jarring, because it's so far into it being a style that it becomes not jarring.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, also like I did a lot of non-Lego elements and mixed it all up, but it works as it's like, it's weird, it's okay. There are like people with lion heads in there. Mm-hmm. It's okay.
And it does have that feeling of like, yeah, it is a film made of Lego, so you can have any of the Lego characters in there.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, right. Whereas I feel like a lot of the films that other people make, they're sort of like pretending like the minifigures are like real people. So then, if you suddenly have a different type of figure, then it breaks the illusion they're trying to create, I guess. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're really leaning into the Lego-ness, it doesn't break the illusion.
Yeah, I suppose I sort of do that in recent time. Like, Deutsche Pass was originally called Lego Deutsche Pass. Mm-hmm. And it's on YouTube, Lego Deutsche Pass, but I had to cut it out for Steinerei because they weren't sure if that would work as a thing shown in a cinema. But yeah, I already thought about like the implications of that also, because like Lego does, like, as a political film, as Deutsche Pass, who has like Germany in its name, Deutsch, and also like Lego in its name. It comments on a lot of things about Germany, but also in some ways a lot of things about Lego, mm-hmm. because it's like Lego is in some way also an aspect of like giving us the story of life, like what they sell for sets, like how they present like certain things, how they present like homes, how they present like the police, how they present like fireworkers, like all that does like create an image in a child's mind. Like, mm-hmm. it's like a story that is getting told to a child, and it's like the thing that makes a child tell stories, like when it's Lego for children, obviously. But I think that's also a thing I thought about a lot, how Lego influences us and how can we influence that. I think Deutsche Pass also sprung out of the idea of seeing those Lego commercials, like a man has fallen into the river in Lego City, like that stuff. And thinking about it, and especially like thinking about the police ones, because like there's a lot of thought about police in Lego Deutsche Pass. And it's like, it came from seeing how the police as an institution is represented in like toy ads, mm-hmm. like fun toy ads with like, hey! And all of that. And yeah, I thought, okay, what's that? And how, like in the Lego police toy ads, there's always like a mugger, a robber, who's getting chased, and it's like nothing more than that, no more like context. Who is that person? Like maybe it's like an immigrant who has no passport, and that's like little bit why I did Deutsche Pass. Like it's about the person in the Lego police ad who runs away and gets caught in the end, basically.
That's I like that. I find it interesting as well because obviously in Crisis as well you have obviously a very different like vibe. I think it's much more of a, in terms of the aesthetic of it, it's a lot more kind of I guess serious in a way. But again, that's another film that has a kind of something to say about, I guess, the police as well, I guess.
Yeah. But it's like also just how I view the police in my life, like from the robber's perspective. Not that I robbed anything, but you know what I mean, like seeing the police from the perspective where you are the one that they are focusing, and not like from an outside perspective.
Mm-hmm. When I make wiki pages on Brickfilms, oftentimes I do have to make a decision on what to do with the word Lego in a title. So oftentimes I just kind of ignore it. Like I just kind of assume that it just says Lego, like just for the sake of the YouTube title. Like with William, with your own Atman films, like they're always Lego Atman on YouTube, but I just call them Atman on the wiki. But when I made the page on Deutsche Pass, like at first I was starting the page and I just wrote German passport because English language wiki. But then like I was watching the film again and I noticed like on the title card, first it says Deutsche Pass, but then the word Lego actually fades up, so it becomes Lego Deutsche Pass. And I was like, oh, it actually says Lego on the actual title card. Like, that's important. Like, it's intentionally in Lego world. So I call the wiki page Lego German Passport.
Nice.
I do want to say I actually do prefer the German title. I think Deutsche Pass sounds a lot more
like a film
interesting
title
than German Passport.
Yeah, I think also it's you don't know that, but it's actually not correct German. It would be Deutscher Pass with like an R. But like Deutsche Pass is also sort of a slang from like migrants, from like Turkish speaking people, who like because like Turkish is a language that doesn't have some stuff, grammar. So yeah, that's also like a conscious decision, and it sounds a lot better, I think, than Lego Deutscher Pass or like German Passport.
Now, I think knowing that now, I think I like the German title even better now. Maybe I'll have to rename it on the wiki just because I like it more.
Nice. Lego
Go
Deutscher
against
Pass.
our own English standards.
That's great. Yeah, might work.
Yeah. This is kind of a tangent, but sometimes on Letterboxd there are like, Italian films or something where, some of them have the original Italian title and then some of them have a translated title that became more popular in the English-speaking world. But sometimes the Italian title becomes so well known, so closely associated with the film, that if they then change it and translate it into English to like be consistent, then the English one looks wrong. It just looks weird. Like I don't know, some Fellini films or something. If they suddenly change the title into English, you're like, that's not the title.
Like La Dolce Vita, like if that was
yeah, exactly. If you translated La Dolce Vita, it's like that's not the name of the film's called La Dolce Vita. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, it's La Dolce Vita.
And an example I would give is probably the French animated film La Planète des Savages, which in English is called Fantastic Planet, but to me that just doesn't. That's not the title of the film. It's the planet. It's the savage.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. Funnily, we have in Germany also the thing of like we have a lot of English films, like Hollywood and stuff, but a lot of times they like have different titles in German, or like different English titles, but with words that German people are supposed to understand better. So it's like a whole different title, but it's like the same movie, and it's still an English title. It's very funny sometimes what comes out of that.
I guess they maybe they still want to convey that it's an American film.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
Do you think we should talk about the showcase films now?
Yeah, I was gonna say if we go on to like a 10-minute tangent on like Letterboxd and like non-Brickfilms, then it probably is the time to talk about. First off, I'll give the introduction. So, for those of you who are new to the podcast, the showcase is an opportunity for each of us to talk about films that either mean a lot to us or that we want to talk about in general. So I picked quite a recent Brick film. A film which I feel like may have gone over some people's radar, but I think it was worth highlighting. It's The Adventures of Tyler Henry, Hunter. So for those who don't know, by Sunspace Studio Productions. So Sunspace Studio Productions did a lot of Brick films in sort of around like 2014, 2015. He's made some films since then, but it's more been a bit more sporadic. He did a film, I think it was in 2015, which was Quest for the Framestone, which was the first like big Tyler and Henry film. I think that was his first Tyler Henry film. And this is kind of like a sequel to that. I think he's made a couple of short kind of Tyler and Henry films since then, but this is like the second kind of like big Tyler Henry film. It kind of follows on from that, but I think it probably still works even without the kind of having seen the previous ones. The thing that kind of strikes me straight away from watching this is that it feels very much like the kind of I feel like I'm being transported back to like sort of 2015 when I watch it. It feels very much that kind of like era of films. And very much even like the Lego that's being used, it feels like it's using a very much similar kind of like Lego minifigures that I have now. But it's it's got such a charm to it. I think there's it's got a really pretty impressive chase sequence throughout the film with the robot, and there's lots of like creative things, like sort of different scenarios, and just sort of like it keeps doing kind of like new things as it kind of goes along. It's just it's a fun vibe, and it's something which I feel like is worth highlighting. Yeah.
I believe he was working on this one for 6 years, which is why there weren't that many releases since the last installment.
Wow.
And it's like I hate to say the sort of content brained thing, but it's like if he'd been a bit more regular with the releases, like he could have built the series up. It's like it's crazy to see this doesn't even have 500 views on YouTube. Again, not to care about views, but I think I can't help but notice like it's kind of crazy.
Hey, this is why we have the showcase.
Yeah, I guess yes. Yeah, I guess we need these films for the showcase. We had this on the Bricks Motion Awards long list, and we watched it in full, like the judges, and I was quite hopeful that it would get in somewhere. It just missed out on being a nominated film, but it was close anyway. And I'd say it was sort of the type of film where when we started watching it, we were like, yeah, basically thinking, well, it's a kind of old school, isn't it? But then the more it went on, the more like set pieces happened and larger scale sequences happened, the more we were like, wow, this was worthwhile, this was a good longer Brick film. Did you mention that it's 25 minutes long?
Yeah, no, I neglected to, I forget, so a detail I neglected is 25 minutes long, which explains why it took so long to make. But yeah.
Yeah, which was definitely worth it. Like, yeah, also like it starts in that flat with, I think it starts in that flat, right? Or in that house. And then it moves around and has like so many different spaces and so many different interesting set pieces, and yeah, as you said, in chase scenes, and a lot of visual humor. I thought, like, a lot of nice visual fun situations that they get into. Yeah, all the set pieces, all the like how it introduces you from like think, okay, this might be like just in that hut that it starts in the beginning, and then moving around all that set pieces, all the details, all the chase stuff, and yeah, just and I think from the style, it even reminded me a little bit of some like German brick films from now. Maybe it's like we are at the point where you were like 5 years ago, but I think a lot of that also can be seen in some German brick filmers, in some German brick filmers' works, like the sort of shots that you get, like a little bit static but still like somewhat moving, and like the expressions and stuff like that.
I can see how it is maybe similar to a lot of German Rick films. Maybe even like, well, Austrian Rick films, if you want to be technical, but even like the Alexander and Andreas's Rick films, like some of the just kind of the lighting and just how the general shots look. I guess I can see the resemblance.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I kind of feel like if you asked me to kind of say exact, examples right now, I'd probably take me a moment to really think about it. But I think that it does remind me of a lot of the brick films that I would have seen when I was starting to make brick. I mean, Sunspace was basically doing stuff when I was starting out, primarily, and there's a certain kind of tone. I think kind of like dynamic with like maybe it's dynamic duos. There's a certain kind of like dynamic with the different characters and kind of like the look of the films and stuff, which I feel like I didn't see that reflected as much in sort of the current sort of English speaking brick film scene.
No.
And I do kind of I don't know. I feel like I would like to see more of that kind of thing.
Of like dynamic duos and like two
not,
dudes and an
I'm not saying that we should bring back dynamic duos, because that's like, but I don't know. I'm trying to think what exactly I'm trying to articulate. I think it's more just that kind of type of story, I guess, really. Like I like seeing sort of brick films in a kind of in a kind of quite kind of standard sort of Lego setting. There's not necessarily a particular theme or anything. It's just kind of like, it's like a little sort of Lego world. I mean, as we see in a lot of kind of, I guess, your films in a way, but that kind of thing. It's nice to see a kind of longer, like a longer form of brick film. That's
I mean, I guess it is trying to tell more of a full, longer, larger scope kind of story in a way that we don't really see. Well, actually, that's probably not correct. That's probably not actually accurate to say. It feels like we don't see it as much anymore. It feels like people are more into the animation side of things rather than the storytelling side of things. But that could just be a feeling that's not actually accurate. I'm not sure. I'm suddenly thinking of how there was a bunch of long entries in Brawl. Like, remarkably long entries. So maybe I'm completely wrong on that.
Yeah, and like just the style of like taking your time and telling things out. I think that's also a thing that why I think it's somewhat like German films I know. It reminds me of that, like just sitting down, taking the time. It's pretty great. Also like in the time with like algorithms and TikTok and Instagram, and it's pretty nice to like just sit down and take like 25 minutes. But also like about the duo, did it what's the relation of the two? I'm not having it in my mind right now. Like, did it say how they are related in some way, or is it just open?
I think they're just, I don't know, I think it's just a classic dynamic duo kind of thing of like they're just friends.
Yeah,
I mean,
interesting. Yeah, because like I was like, I think with like Crisis a year ago, I did also have like a dynamic duo, and I was like watching a lot of old dynamic duo brick films, but also like films at that time, and I was kind of wondering what's like the situation there, because like it seems a little bit gay to me. Like I did it gay in Crisis definitely, but like also from like very very old silent, or not silent, but like what are they called in English? Like the films with like two people, a dynamic duo doing like slapstick stuff. Like something
Laurel and
Laurel and Hardy. Yeah. um, and like stuff like that. And it is kind of queer coded in some way. Like back then they couldn't like make open queerness, but they lie in bed together. They do everything together. They like are a little bit a family, and I like that aspect. Like just also with especially men still being like so far from each other, like emotionally, and also like friends are okay, but only from a distance. I like it a lot that like in such films there are like just two dudes doing stuff together, and like it's chill.
Yeah.
The dynamic duo.
I know that is a question I got a bunch of times making Benny and Lee. People would sometimes ask, "Well, so what? Are they gay or what?" And I was like, "They're just two guys."
Yeah, but it's like what's the difference in a sense? Like just two guys being there together, and it doesn't matter in some sense.
Yeah, but I think that the people making dynamic duo films never really thought about it. You know, the genre used to just be called two guys films, and I think that's the extent that anyone ever thought about it. It's a film with two guys. You need two guys because they need to bounce dialogue back and forth. And
I think the one that I kind of think of as most kind of like out of the ones that kind of at the top of my head, I feel like the Ben and Andy is kind of like, it's very specifically kind of started off as, because they kind of age in the same way as like I think Zach ages, that they started off as like these kind of like school friends, and then they become like I mean, I don't live together. They're just kind of like, yeah, they're just like lifelong friends kind of thing.
Yeah, it is kind of unique about Ben and Andy that it is established that they don't live together, whereas usually in the Dynamic Duo series the characters are implied to live together. Suddenly remembered a bit of deep lore about Benny and Lee, which is when I posted the first thread of a Benny and Lee film on the old website, I referred to them as two brothers. But then after that, I just kind of dropped that completely and never thought of them as brothers, never wrote them as brothers or ever had that in mind when making the films. So I would consider that to be sort of not canon, and you know, I'd consider them to just be two friends who just live in the same single room house for some unexplained reason.
And that's like so like the idea that they're brothers is kind of like, you know, in the Star Wars thing, the extended universe, it's like that's Legends. So it's like, you know,
it's Legends.
The non-canon non-canon lore. Benny and Lee Legends. Yeah.
But I guess I was reminded the talk of like this film being in a sort of an older style and a sort of a slower style. It did make me think of my own pick for the Brickfilms Showcase, which is About a Door by Holgor. I decided I'd take a look at some older German Brickfilms for the occasion, and I realised that we've never actually picked About a Door before on the showcase. And About a Door, well, it's I guess must be 20 years old now because 2004, but it's an old community classic, and yeah, as the title implies, it is about a door, and the door has a large sign on the outside that says "Do not open this door," which leads to a very, very extended debate among a group of people as to whether or not they should open the door or not, because they're curious as to what might be behind it. And I do feel like, yeah, About a Door is like very slow, and like people might think it's quite, you know, a bit janky now, but it's kind of, it is charming in its old school ways if you're, you know, if you're receptive to that. I particularly like the fact that all of the characters are just voiced by the creator, you know, pretty obviously, and the accent and some of the broken English also I find pretty appealing. Like there's one line in there that's, "We can't let the door being opened." I was just
nice.
I laugh at that line. but basically, yeah, About a Door is like, I still feel like that it's clever on a sort of conceptual level, the manner in which the conversation plays out, and just kind of the idea of like the film doesn't it's not actually about what's behind the door. Like there's no canonical answer, you know, like it's never explained, and it was never supposed to be explained. Like the whole, it's only set up to get the events to happen, to get the arguments to happen, and you know, the escalation of the debate. And About a Door was like influential in the community back then, where people made a bunch of parodies of it. You know, where various people would make their own interpretation of what's behind the door, and I'm not sure if that I did take a look at some old like archives and stuff, and it seems like at the time people actually didn't really. There weren't a bunch of posts saying, "Oh, you didn't explain it." Like, I expected there to be some people being angry that the question is never answered in the film. I kind of expected maybe that's why it became a popular parody trend, but it doesn't actually seem to have been a thing at the time. I guess people just realized that it was ripe for parody because it was never explained, rather than them being sort of annoyed by it. But also, About a Door, it was it's very much like On or No by Bert L as well. I would imagine that it made a big impression on Bert.
Yeah.
And some other people at the time.
Yeah, I think so. I just saw one of the comments on the video, like on the now uploaded thing, is, "How dare you? You know the reason why I'm upset. I'm just not going to say, as everyone else who is watching this video needs to suffer as I have." One of the 3 comments of the video. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, because this is a more recent YouTube upload. Yeah, so there's barely any comments or views.
Yeah.
But yeah, somebody who sat there for 12 minutes waiting for the answer.
Yeah. But do you think like that's something like of the time that like it's changed to now, like how we tell stories, or is it like why do you think is that the case?
I mean, this certainly does have that sort of old school vibe where it's more concerned with the things that the characters are saying rather than like the animation or the filmmaking, I guess. William, did you see this one before, or did you watch it the first time for this show?
Like I've seen this so many times.
I
would have seen it originally, I think, when they had the Brit Film of the Week.
Of the week.
Bricks in Motion, yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious to know if people watch it now for the first time today, do they still see anything in it, or does it just seem completely antiquated and just like slow and like painful to watch?
Again, I'm probably not the best person to ask because like I've seen so many like
you're pretty used to older.
Yeah, but I feel like there is something to get out of this in terms of like it feels like there's a kind of like philosophical question of like is meaning applied to this thing that's in the door simply because we're told not to look at it, look inside? Does it entice you to open it just because there's a sign? And the fact that like if the sign wasn't there, people wouldn't care about what was at the door. And yeah, like how it feels like there's something there. It's like it's like a hypothetical, right? Like it feels like a philosophical question that you'd be asked, like
yeah. I think that's what makes it still work on some level, is that it sort of reminds me of like the briefcase in Pulp Fiction, where it's like it literally doesn't matter what's inside it, like that's not important, and the creator doesn't care either. Like the film's actually about all of the events that take place around it and what it means to the characters around it and what unfolds as a result of it. And I feel like that is probably something that you could find a way to work in a similar idea in a new film with a different concept, but you have something that in a way it's what the film is about, but it's actually not what the film is about, but it causes what the film is actually about to happen.
Yeah, like a murder case that isn't solved in the film, like or every crime thriller is basically about something else, I think, or like every mystery film in some way. Yeah.
That would actually be a really funny concept, to do a murder mystery film that's never solved. That would annoy people so much more than this film.
Oh, actually,
that would be hilarious.
Yeah, I did that as my first non-stop motion real life thing was like a crime thriller, with real people, like, and it wasn't solved, spoiler, but it was very sad because I thought like, oh, it's gonna have so much meaning because of that and stuff, but most people just came to me and asked me when the sequel is coming out.
To get the
yeah,
answer.
Yeah.
I
So
guess that's,
sadly, yeah.
come to think of it, that suddenly reminded me of like Twin Peaks, where they didn't want to solve the murder at the center
Yeah.
of Twin Peaks, and they were sort of forced into it because everyone wanted it to be solved. They wanted to know the answer.
Oh yeah, I think it was supposed to end with the first season at first, right? Wasn't it really?
I don't know if it's... I think that they just wanted to keep going for more seasons,
Okay.
but like moving away from the murder and just not treating that as the great, the great central question that once it's answered, the whole thing is just over then.
It's a classic. It's a kind of kind of extreme end or something that is based around like about being the journey, not a destination. It's like the mystery is a prompt to get to bring you into this world of interesting characters, and it's interesting, I think, because I feel like there is that kind of... I feel like too much media, especially like mainstream media, is focused so much on that kind of plot focused thing of like, that's the main thing, getting to the end points, is the most important thing, where it's like it neglects the actual steps that lead to that sometimes. It's always why like I've never been a fan of a lot of like... This is a real tangent, but and probably not a very interesting one, but I've never been a huge fan of kind of like the like the kind of like conclude the ending of like a film series where the whole thing is about kind of finishing it, because like to me that it focuses so much on like, oh, it's a big battle scene or something, like, and like Endgame, like it's just sort of it's all we've done all the interesting stuff now it's just kind of like, how does this thing finish? Like to me that's just not interesting. Like I'd much rather see the stuff that leads up to that,
Yeah, I think like when thinking of it, like every mystery story, but also like maybe every story in general, or like conventional story, could have like 3 possible endings, with one being like the mystery is being found out and it's like something funny, something special. Like in a Brick film, it's probably something funny from experience, but the second thing would be like it's being found out, but it's like nothing, and that's like devastating that you tried to solve that mystery and you found it out, and it's like for example, if your film from Steinerei, ninth, what's the title in full?
Close Encounters of the Ninth Kind.
Close Encounters of the Ninth Kind. If it just ended, they go there and there's nothing there, and what does it leave you? And like you could just not end it. And I think the second, like everything of that could work in a film and can work and has worked, but like the second and the third option are most of the time like lead to much more interesting ideas and conclusions and thoughts. But also like the first thing is so much more engaging at a first time level. Like you watch it and you get like the reward. And so that's like what commercial films are catering to, like, because they don't care if people think about it or like have a connection with it. They care that people like watch it and are happy with it, and are like engaged, and it's not about the feelings but about the fun, maybe what we talked about earlier a little bit. And so it's like you have to like at the moment consciously make an effort to come to that point where you don't, like, where you think, okay, I can do a thing like in the Brick film that we're talking about. I can like just leave it open. That is a possibility that I can do.
And also, I think as well, like when you're trying to make things that are kind of artistically sort of minded, I feel like or like true to life. There is the kind of the fact that like things don't just have like most things don't have like just a conclusive ending where like everything's wrapped up. That's not how life works. And I think that I don't know. Sometimes we try and create these sort of narratives in films, in media, where it's just like, oh yeah, these things are resolved, everything's solved, and we don't have to think about this thing anymore now. And it's, I don't know. I mean, that's not, that's not always true to life, I guess.
With our Steinerei film, it was very, very quickly put together, and I feel like it's, a bit tricky to really get what we were going for. So sort of the idea was that it would be about like people all around the world noticing a bunch of coincidences, and then they essentially just weave conspiracy theories around these coincidences, and they think it must be something greater, but then it turns out that it's not.
That's right. So it is like almost the second option. So sorry for getting that wrong in telling it.
I guess it was kind of a very about a door-esque concept, but what happened was we kind of felt that it was a very, very deflating ending. If everyone just suddenly realizes, oh, it was nothing, and they all go, oh, and then they just walk away, it just felt like a really, really bad ending, like just ending on such a down note that just amounted to absolutely nothing. So then it was like, okay, well, we gotta say it was aliens. It actually, as it turns out, there was something causing it all, but the people were onto something, but they just had it completely wrong. Like they spun a conspiracy theory, they had the wrong answer, but it turns out there was something. But then it still feels like the fact that it was aliens kind of doesn't really amount to anything. But we kind of tried. We had some thoughts in mind that didn't really come out, but there was something going on at least.
It's definitely like a nicer conclusion, as like you couldn't just end it with like, okay, that is like the world is saved or something like that. It could be great maybe, but like I think it makes sense to have that, like to have it just be something not mundane because it's like aliens, but not that important in that sense. I think that worked definitely.
Well, if we'd spent more time on it, we certainly could have given the plot outline a number of additional passes to make things come across or add more to it. But now really getting off topic. Well, I guess I don't know. Maybe I've said all that I really have to say about a door.
Should we talk about the your pick?
Yeah, definitely we could do that. Okay, so I picked a film called Pink Spacesuit by a Brick filmer called Emilia. And Emilia is doing a lot. Like, I don't know, I think she's not that much into the community as I have seen. Like, I didn't recognize her from there. But she's doing, like, Brick films from... I don't actually know from when, but like I think it's old Star Wars films back then, like years back, and is actually now doing a lot of real life work, a lot of like stop motion work that goes beyond bricks, but also sometimes some brick films. And so the thing that I brought is like a very short film of her, but like a very creative one, I think. Which is a lot about like queer visibilities, queer like outliving yourself. It is about like a spaceship, like a Lego spaceship, which is like bought as a Lego spaceship as the set, but where the person who bought it or like who owns it, the child has changed the space person to like a pink figure. Because like there's also implied that the person themselves is like transgender, and now it is about like the parent seeing that and being angry about it and like trying ways to criticize that and like to get onto the child about that and like, oh, what if your father sees it and stuff like that. So it has a lot of political themes. But it's also like with a cute space Lego person doing stuff around. And like I guess my suggestion would be in general her channel, Emilia, because it has like a lot of great films and also a lot of great brick films. Sometimes very, very brutal, sometimes very over the top, a little bit violent at times, but always very creative and fun.
This is the kind of brick film where, yeah, you can tell it's being made by somebody who is now also making like live action, potentially, submitting to film festivals, where like the fact that it is made with Lego and has Lego stop motion, that's not exactly the selling point primarily. Like it's using that, but it's using it in such a way that it's just part of a film in a different kind of style with a different kind of brain to it than what brick films coming out of the community usually are like. This is much more like a sort of a film that could be submitted to like small film festivals and things. It's not being made for the YouTube audience.
Yeah, it again like uses the element of Lego as a literal element, like not just making a film with that, but like it's Lego and it's also a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and but also using it to be about real people as well.
yeah.
But even so, like what it does with the Lego, I did quite like. Especially what I really like is when the like yellow figure is like blinking between yellow and red to like represent the emotion at that point in the film. And like it's like really simple but effective in camera effect.
Yeah.
That ties into the actual themes and meaning going on in the plot well.
One thing that really strikes me with this film is like how, real it feels. Like it feels like a real conversation that does happen, obviously. And it's that's something which like I don't feel like I'd be able to compliment that often with a brick film. Is like the idea of a conversation really feeling like it's actually happening, which I find really interesting. But yeah, it's and yeah, I think there's so much you can pick up at this film, of kind of the idea of like really a very innocent thing, really, like having a pink astronaut. Like it doesn't have to mean anything. But like because of the kind of baggage that comes with that, it's like with the identity of the child in question, it's everything is scrutinized, everything is questioned, in a way where like if it was in a different scenario, like no one would think anything of it, and I think that's a really interesting theme. I think that is kind of tackled.
I think people could see the sort of, or could relate to it coming from different perspectives or backgrounds, or but yeah, I do think it was quite clever to have the conversation playing out off screen and using the Lego to more sort of illustrate the like internal feelings. It's more interesting than if it's just people, we shot reverse shot just isn't it so meaningful?
Yeah, definitely. Like it's a whole new visual layer that complements it very much. And also, I think like using Lego in a sense of like transness or queerness works so well. Like in some way, because what you said, like it is in some way gendered, and we don't realize that it's gendered, but like my experience is everything that is gendered becomes so more clear when it's about trans people, because then it's like hyper seen, like everybody looks at it. Like as a trans woman, for example, you could do anything that like some cis women do, like some like everyday stuff, but it's all like seen from that lens, and everything is like judged from that lens. Okay, but is that really a womanly thing that you do? And like there's purposefully not like a point where it's like good, like it's either too feminine or like too far away from, oh, I thought you like to be a woman, why are you doing that? Like that kind of stuff. And I think that for a point, and also like just like those figures like even in the body sense, they can just swap their bodies. Like that's possible. Like the space figure is like not like it's a little bit different here because it's like with special effects and stuff, but like it is a space figure and it's like a yellow naked figure basically, but it could like just change its body to be what it desires. Like that's possible in Lego.
Yeah, the sort of all the Lego figures are the same base.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had that thought when I made the really short animation called Transformation for the Brickboard Pride Month 2022, and that was largely just because I thought the concept was funny, and it's like, well, I have an excuse now to actualize it, but I was trying to decide on what face I would use for the figure at the center, and I had a few like ideas in mind, but I was like, I don't know if some of these faces I have in mind, if they might come across like juvenile, like I mean, as if the figure's a kid, and I was like, oh, I'm not really trying to imply that, but then suddenly, like, I had the light bulb moment of like, wait a minute, I need to just use the most generic smiley, like just the base smiley that can be anyone. Like that's the most perfect answer to this question. So that's what I did.
Yeah, definitely. It's like the most non-gendered thing that there is in some way in Lego.
If you look at the figure in Pink's Spacesuit, when it is just the yellow figure with no hair and with just the generic smiley, like if I was making a brick film, I would expect an audience to just think they would perceive a completely blank like yellow figure. They would perceive it as male until sufficiently coded otherwise.
Yeah. Definitely, and it's like, especially in that film, it's so horrible to think of that because it's true and it's like natural in this world where like it's not because people are bad people or something like that, but it's because like we get that into our heads and we get all that like, and for that film it means that like that's the whole conflict that goes in the audio line with what they are talking about. Like there is a person who's probably trans feminine, who probably is assigned male at birth. Like, we don't know that exactly, but it's like the presumption here. And who gets the horrible thing of, like, being, like, still in that box and not getting out of that box, and the family, it's themselves. And, like, we as an audience, or, like, a general audience, does the same with a piece of plastic, which isn't, like, saying much, but, like, it's essentially the same horrible like pain of like just this generic neutral figure is automatically put into that box.
Yeah, and I guess it's slightly amusing to me now that we could have so much thought about, you know, what ostensibly is a completely blank figure, or like I spoke about like, oh, my thought process behind choosing the default face, like, oh, I'll put the default face on this figure, but that actually had like some intention behind it. It's just something funny to me about that you could put so much thought or intention into something that just looks like the total default.
Nothing is really neutral. Like everything that is saying to be neutral or like it doesn't work in this society, in this situation.
Where do you go from there?
Yeah, where do we go from here?
I don't know. Depends.
So I'm suddenly thinking, is there a way to get back on topic in a that would flow?
Yeah.
If this film kind of resonates with you as an audience, I think like you should go and check out like her channel.
Yeah, definitely. Like a lot what we talked about, I think, is also very creatively in some films, and like it's a lot of fun. I think always very engaging.
Hopefully, if she ever sees this, it would mean something that we could spend so much time talking, and it at least started from the Brick film.
Yeah, but I think like it's all something that's in the film in some way, or I could imagine that she thought of a lot of that naturally.
I don't know, I had a kind of a random thought, which was that like people. I think people online generally perceive like, oh yeah, the pink spaceman. Oh, I guess that's the female spaceman, Lego spaceman. But as far as I know, it's actually canonically male.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay,
I don't know. That's just a
but
random
are there
memory.
like with the Spaceman series, like are there female characters, or is it even gendered? I'm not that much into that. Into the space
I don't
series.
think so. I think that any sort of like canon like that would just be from, some of them have like a line in the Lego Movie 2, and then like, so then I think the pink one like came from a Lego Movie 2 set exclusively.
Oh yeah, I see. I remember that.
I am suddenly looking at the time of the recording. What do you think, William?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we should probably kind of aim to wrap up. But yeah, no, thank you so much for joining us today. I feel like you're another guest who we've been meaning to have for a long time. I think that I think it was like Steinerei last year. Like at one point
we had the idea in mind.
Yeah, I've had the idea of mine of like doing like an in-person. It's really funny because like now we've you're someone that we've met multiple times in person.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I was very happy to be here finally. I was very happy to be invited. Yeah, I'm. It got a lot into certain directions, but I think it was very interesting. A lot of interesting thoughts and ideas, and yeah, I take a lot with me from the talk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we obviously, always looking forward to seeing what you do next, and hopefully, hopefully see you again in future Steinerei. I know it's hopefully not as far afield as Vienna for you, because that is a bit of a distance, but
yeah, definitely. I hope we see each other there. Nice.
Yeah, I think everyone missed you this year, and Blandir showed up this year, and
that was the saddest thing. I was so happy to finally meet Blandir, and it didn't happen. But next time, hopefully. I hope.
Yeah, hopefully next year.
Yeah.
I don't know if Blandir would make the journey again, but hopefully the rest of us will all be there next year.
Yeah.
And thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah.
It's been great to talk.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
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 All right.
That's slightly less awkward because we've actually got video, so I can just sort of like wave.